There was a season in my life, nearly 18 months long, that quietly asked more of me than any professional challenge ever had. What made it so disorienting wasn't that my life or career looked like they were falling apart. On the outside, much of what I had built over nearly 30 years of leadership was still standing. I was functioning and I was producing, still leading and supporting others. I was doing what I had always done. But inside, something was no longer aligned. What I understand now and couldn't really see at the time is that this didn't arrive all at once. It built up gradually, almost invisibly. The very things I had always prided myself on, my work, my resilience, my ability to carry responsibility, my growth mindset, my hustle and drive, along with my commitment to others, were still there. In many ways, they were stronger than ever, and that was part of the problem. Those strengths had carried me for decades. They helped me build businesses, lead teams, navigate change, and show up when things were hard. But over time, I stopped paying attention to how much they were costing me. I stopped managing them. I stopped creating balance around them. And what once felt empowering slowly became depleting. Not because those strengths were wrong, but because they were no longer being held with intention. What made this season especially confusing was that I'm also a coach. I help other people recognize misalignment. I support leaders as they navigate burnout, identity shifts, and moments of recalibration. I have language for these patterns. I've seen them countless times in others. And yet, I couldn't see it in myself. I couldn't diagnose what was happening while I was in it. And not because I lacked awareness or skill, but because it's incredibly difficult to observe your own blind spots when you're still operating from them. I was doing what so many capable, self-aware leaders do, women do. I kept going. I adapted and I tried to compensate for what felt missing. I assumed I could rely on the very strengths that had always worked before. At the time, I didn't understand what was happening. I just knew that the way I had been moving through the world, successfully, competently, tirelessly, was no longer sustainable. The strategies that had carried me for so long stopped working. The pace felt heavier, the clarity I once trusted felt distant, and the voice that had always guided me grew quieter and harder to hear. Looking back now with perspective and compassion, I can see that this season wasn't a breakdown. It was an invitation to slow down long enough to notice what I had been overriding, an invitation to listen to myself instead of performing for expectations, and a call to action so I could reconnect with parts of me that had been set aside in the name of responsibility, achievement, and leadership. What unfolded over those 18 months was not quick, neat, or pretty. There was anxiety, resistance, and confusion. There was also a sense of grief for versions of my life I had outgrown. But there was also an honest reckoning with old patterns that once served me that no longer seemed to fit. This conversation comes from the other side of that season. Not from the middle of the storm, but from the clarity that only comes after walking all the way through it. With time and integration, I began to do the work to recognize what needed to shift and what I needed to come back to. I also realized that what I experienced wasn't unique to me. I see it in the leaders I coach, the women I mentor, the high achieving professionals who sit across from me and quietly wonder, what's wrong with me? And the answer is almost always the same. There's nothing wrong with you, but something within you may be asking to be acknowledged. Now, I am not suggesting you blow up your life or walk away from everything you've built. What I am suggesting is that we return to ourselves honestly, compassionately, and with intention. It's about recognizing when success and self-abandonment have quietly become intertwined and choosing a different way forward. I am speaking on this because I've lived it, because I've moved through the unraveling done the work of reflection, and come out more grounded, more aligned, and more myself than ever before. And because I believe deeply that if I had understood sooner what was actually happening, that season would have felt far less isolating. So, my hope is that I can offer you language, permission, and perspective that can help you recognize yourself sooner than I did. And just know this, growth doesn't mean starting over. It often means coming back to you, to your true self.